is Dr. Nathan Groot. I am a music instructor at the Arkansas School for Mathematics, Sciences, and the Arts, where I teach string ensemble, applied string lessons, and other music courses. Today we're going to be taking a look at Perpetual Motion, which is a part of set 2 for the junior high South region of Arkansas all-region audition. First things first, we should take note of the key signature, the time signature, some rhythms, just sort of the basics that we look at when we first approach a piece of music. We have two flats, B flat and E flat. We are in the key of B flat major. So this is one of the keys that you're going to be practicing. It's maybe a good idea to play your scale, B flat major scale, before you practice this one each day. Additionally, I think it's important just to think about our finger patterns. So on the C string, if you think about our E flat, we have a 1-2 finger pattern, so our first and second finger are touching. Same thing on our G string, right? Because of our B flat touches our A. The D string, if you use your fourth finger, is going to be an open finger pattern, so no fingers touching, that low 1 for the E flat. And then if you use your fourth finger on the A string, it's going to be a 3-4 finger pattern, that D and E flat touching. There's one spot on the C string in third position. In third position, that's going to be a 3-4 finger pattern, although we don't actually use the fourth finger. The important thing to remember is just that we have a whole step between 1 and 2 and then 2 and 3. One exception to our key signature is the accidental in measure 10. So we have F natural, G, F natural, and then normally we would have a low 1, right, for an E flat, but we're not going to do it this time because we have an E natural marked in our part. So that means that what was this becomes this, right? So E natural, and then we go back to an F, and we use this opportunity to bring our finger back because it's immediately followed by an E flat. And then that's the only time that we're going to play other notes that are not within this key of B flat major. One last note on the fingerings, there are some fourth fingers that I recommend. These are not in your part, but I do recommend using the fourth fingers. I'll go through each one of them individually, but generally the rule I'm following is I'm not crossing a string for one note. And this is a general rule that you can usually follow. Sometimes it doesn't quite work, but I try to follow it as much as I can, is to not cross a string for just one note. So, fourth fingers, we have measure 2, the very last note of measure 2, the and of 4. Next one is measure 3, the and of 1, which is the second note in the measure. The next fourth finger I recommend is the and of 1 in measure 6. That is going to be the second note of measure 6. The next fourth finger I recommend is the second note of measure 8, the and of 1 in measure 8. The next fourth finger I recommend is the second to last note of measure 11. So that is right on beat 4 of measure 11. And finally, the last fourth finger I recommend is in measure 12, right on beat 4, the second to last note of measure 12. But again, if you follow that rule of not crossing to a different string for just one note, you'll wind up with those fourth fingers anyway. All right, so while we're on the topic of left hand, there is a shift that's marked in, and yes, you do have to do this shift. I know the audition is blind, but the adjudicators will be able to tell if you've done the shift or not by the timbre of the strings. So make sure that you are practicing this shift, even though, yes, it is possible to play it on 2 strings, but you have to play the shift. This happens in the second half of measure 7 and the first half of measure 8. It's a little bit of a tricky one. The reason it's kind of tricky is because we're shifting on an open string. We're going from open G to first finger F. So a lot of times when we shift, we maybe have a finger on the string as we shift. This is not the case this time. So what else can we use to find this? So we need some sort of tactile information. In other words, we can't do this, hand away, and then just put it there, right? Even though our finger isn't on the string, we have some tactile information. That's our thumb, That's our hand here. And additionally, our hand is going to hit the bout of our instrument, and that really helps with finding third position. So one thing I would recommend practicing is measure 7 and 8, just sort of isolated. And you can isolate it even more than that. You can isolate just one note or two notes or three notes. So that might look like this: A, G, F, first finger, third position. So maybe if you're just practicing, maybe you set a specific amount of time just to practice this. If you need to compare, you can do 1, 0, 3, followed by 1, 0, 1, just to compare those pitches. So you can say, you can ask yourself, does my first finger F sound the same as my third finger F, right? So am I hitting the same one? If you need to use a tuner, that's okay too. But that is a shift I would practice a lot, because it's something you have to find without the tactile information of our fingers, but rather the tactile information of our thumb shifting up and our hand reaching the bout of the instrument. Additionally, if you need to practice that shift, just moving from first to third a lot, you can always just practice D, first finger on the C string, shifting up to third position. And you can practice it with hearing the shift. Remember that the hand remains the same. And the finger pressure comes off slightly, but you're still making contact with that string. So after you've shifted up to third position, we have to exist in third position for a moment. F, A natural, G. In third position here, we have a 3-4 finger pattern. We're not using our fourth finger, so it's just important to remember the whole steps between 1 and 2, and then 2 and 3. And if you hit that A really in tune, you should hear the A string ringing. You should hear your instrument ringing. Then when we shift down, just keep your hand frame really in line so that we can go 2, 4. And this is another spot to maybe isolate and practice, is just those 8 notes in third position and then back in first position, because that shift is a little bit of a treacherous one, going down to a low 2 in first position and then playing a fourth finger G. You're going to want to make sure your hand frame is really, really solid in order to hit that accurately. Okay, finally, something really important in this etude is the bow. So you'll notice some little articulations over the first measure. And these are staccatos. And then after that, something that says SIM, period. So this just means that you are going to continue playing this in a similar way, or rather exactly the same. So you're going to use the same bow stroke throughout this whole etude, even though the staccatos are only marked on the first measure. This continues through the whole thing. So what is a staccato? It's going to have space after it. We're going to stop the bow, right? So rather than playing legato, we're going to stop the bow. Where in the bow should you play this? Should you play it out here? Should you play it right here? Probably not at the extremes. I think if you're way out at the tip, that's a useful exercise, but it's not the most comfortable place to play it. At the very frog, again, good exercise, not the best place to play it. I recommend somewhere around the middle or slightly closer to the frog. So every bow has a balance point to it. This is a very springy part of the bow. If this were a lot faster, you might do sort of a brush stroke. In this case, it's not necessary to do a brush stroke because it's only at 80 on the metronome. So we're just going to keep the bow on the string, but we're going to make it nice and short. just like that. So one additional thing about this bow stroke, I like to focus more on the initiation of the stroke and kind of let it go a little bit. That doesn't mean that I'm coming way off the string or anything. I'm staying on the string, or at least very, very close to the string. What I'm not doing is being super, super gluey. Now, being super gluey can be a really helpful thing to practice. And it sounds honestly fine. If I heard this in audition, I wouldn't think that much of it. But in my opinion, I think releasing a little bit of that weight after the initiation of the stroke is a little bit of a nicer sound. So what that does is basically allows the string to vibrate just a little bit more than it would if you were being super, super gluey, even weight the whole way through on these staccato strokes, okay? Try to make sure that all of these staccato strokes, down bows, up bows, first measure, last measure, not last measure, second to last measure, because the last measure is a half note. Make sure that all of these sound the same. It's hard, but try to make sure they sound really even. Try recording yourself and ask yourself, do these all sound like the same bow stroke, right? All right, so I'm gonna play this at some slower tempos with the metronome. We're gonna start at 60 and then do 70 and then do 80, which is our goal tempo. So we won't do a ton of them. If you need to go a bit slower, you absolutely can and should. You can also practice in small chunks, and in fact should practice in small chunks. It's, even though I'm giving you this example of sort of going through from beginning to end at different tempos, you should practice in a lot of different ways. And this is something that if you want more information on, I'd be happy to send some resources your way. This is just one of many ways to practice. All right, here is perpetual motion at 60. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and. Now we're at 70. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and. Finally, here is our goal tempo of 80. 1, 2, ready, and. All right, I hope this video has been somewhat useful to you. If you have any questions or if I missed anything that you're curious about, just let me know. You can comment below. You can reach out to me through my website, either way. But otherwise, I wish you the best of luck at your audition and happy practicing.